Welcome everyone to tonight's StudyTank session. I'm Nonzo. I'm a software developer and one of the community organizers here at TechTank. Part of TechTank is our StudyTank initiative that is a virtual space where we get together to discuss anything around technical concepts related to web technologies. This includes, but it's not limited to, data structures and algorithms, web fundamentals, and really anything related to web technologies itself. We started a community educators program a few months ago, and it really invites members from the community to come on and teach about topics that they're really passionate about, because we believe that the learning journey is not just about learning new technologies, but it's also about how we can effectively communicate the things that we've learned. So tonight we have an awesome session by Hojung, who is going to be talking to us more about accessibility, specifically with navigation menus. At the end of the presentation, you'll get a chance to unmute your mic and ask questions to Hojung through either chat or by unmuting your mic itself. So without further ado, let's welcome Hojung up to the panel.
All right. Thank you, Nanzo.
My
So hi, everyone. My name is Hojung. And today, like Lanzo said, we will be talking about making the navigation menus accessible. So let me just go ahead and share my screen. Before we begin, just a quick little bit about myself. So I first got into accessibility back in 2019. I was actually volunteered to learn about accessibility for the project that I was going to be starting at work. So after learning about accessibility, I found it very interesting how the content on the internet, on websites, are not always accessible to people with different types of disabilities, and there are different ways you can do to make those contents accessible to users with different types of accessibility, different types of disabilities. So after learning more about it, I back in 2021, I believe, I went and I did a test which is conducted by the IAAP and I got myself a web accessibility specialist certification. And now currently I am the accessibility lead at my team, and I provide consultations and training to team members and to the co-op students that we get. So back to the topic about making navigation successful, right? So why do we even need to talk about this, right? So because the navigation menus is actually quite a vital component on any websites or applications, right? This is the only component that allows the users to navigate around your sites, like go from pages to page, or even to perform any some sort of a task. But this is quite often overlooked when it comes to accessibility. The good thing is the tutorials that you see on YouTube or like Udemy's, is actually catching on to teaching people on using semantic HTMLs and teaching people to use the nav element to create a navigation menus. But usually that's the end of it. Like, it doesn't go any further. So today I will be showing how we can take a one step further and make a really accessible navigation menus for users with the disabilities. In this case, it will be more for blind users who have to rely on screen readers. So typically, we see navigations built using simple anchor elements or using another list inside the navigation, inside the nav element. So on the slide, I have the two code snippets. One of them has a nav, and then it just has a 3 anchor elements for item 1, item 2, and item 3. And then the second code snippet here has the nav, which has a unordered list inside it, and then unordered list has 3 list items with the anchor elements for item 1, item 2, and item 3. Normally, this would be fine. I would say, like if I was testing a website and if I saw this as a navigation, I would say, yeah, this is okay. This is passable, right? But only if your navigation is very small, right? So if you have maybe 5 or less navigation items, and if you do not have the submenus, the mega menus, if you're not using that, so if you have just very simple single level, very small navigation, I would say this is passable, right? But that's not always the case. The sites usually have more than 5 navigation items, and then we see a lot of websites using mega menus as well. So let's take a look at how we can take a step further and we will slowly make the navigation more accessible. Right? The first thing we're gonna make accessible is your active links. Right? Quite very commonly, we apply class active to the active link. So visually, there are some changes to rest of the menu items next to it, right? It could be a different background color. It could be just a thicker, different colored bottom border. It could be a different font style, right? Whatever it is, we apply the CSS to make that active link visually visually different from the other ones. But this is only good for people who can see, right? Only if you can see, right? If you cannot see and you have to rely on screen readers, this really doesn't convey the same information to the users who are using screen readers, right? So to make this better, we add an attribute called aria current to the anchor element. So in the code snippet, I have the anchor element. You can still use a class active, that's fine, because that is for visual presentation. And on top of that, we add attribute called aria current with the value of page. So what this does is this provides additional information to the screen readers and tell the screen reader, hey, this is the page you are currently on right now. So when users go through the navigation menu items and they come across this link, the screen reader will say, this is the current page that you are on. So the user okay, I'm currently on this page, so I don't have to interact with this page again. So I have a small, very short audio clip to for you guys to actually hear the difference between having that aria current and not having that aria current. So first audio clip that I'm going to play is the typical active link with the class and no aria current attribute.
Navigation landmark list with 3 items. Link item 1. Link.
Can anyone hear that? I'm not sure if everyone can hear that.
Yeah, I can hear.
Okay. So again, I'm going to play it once more. This is without the aria current.
Navigation landmark list with 3 items. Link item 1. Link item 2. Link item 3.
Okay, so the audio clip, has set link item 1, link item 2, link item 3, but it doesn't say anything about that class active because screen readers don't actually care about the classes, right? And screen readers can't really see, so the styles doesn't really mean anything. But when I play the audio clip for the one that uses ARIA current, this is what it sounds like.
Navigation landmark list with 3 items. Link current page item 1. Link item 2. Link item 3.
Okay, once more.
Navigation landmark list with 3 items. Link current page item 1. Link item 2. Link item 3.
Okay. So with the one that uses ARIA current, you can clearly hear that it's a current page. Right? So this one is that navigation landmark list with 3 items, link current page item 1, link item 2, link item 3. Right? So from that, the user knows, okay, I'm currently on the item 1 page. So they don't have to, click on the item 1 page, even again, while they are already on that page. So the next one, now we're going to look at how we can make the mega menus more accessible, right? So the mega menus, we know, it's the one that opens the sub menu. And then, in the sub menu, we have more links going to different parts of the website and different parts of the page. Typically, so on the slide, I have a code snippet of a very typical mega menu structure in HTML. So we see a nav element with the unordered list. And then the list item has the anchor element, and then it usually has another unordered list element as a sibling of the anchor element. Right? And usually that anchor element represents the first level of the menu, item, and then the unordered list, the sibling unordered list represents the sub menu items, right? And that the first link is usually what I call a dead link. So meaning it has a href with the hashtag, so it doesn't go anywhere. And we still use class to to distinguish that that this is the page that you are currently on, or you can use that class on one of the submenus as well. There's actually a few issues with this, and one of the issue is the dead link, right? So the problem with this type of structure is that the first problem is that the first level menu item is a dead link, and that can be confusing to screen reader users. That link is still a link, and when screen reader sees it, it will still say it's a link, but it doesn't know that it's a dead link, right? So when the screen reader user comes across this link, they will still hear that it's a link item 1, right? So they will click on it by pressing enter, and it doesn't go anywhere, right? So they don't hear anything changing on the web page, on the page. So that's a very confusing and a bad user experience for them. It might take them a while to figure it out, right? Or maybe some users are already familiar with this type of structure, so they don't struggle too much. But in accessibility, we always look at the both extreme ends, and the worst case scenario is that the user will be confused, they will get lost, they get frustrated, and then they will just leave your website, right? The second issue is there's no indication of the submenu opening, right? So when you interact with the link by pressing enter or space key or clicking on it, whatever, when you interact with the link, the submenu opens up, but there's no way to tell the screen reader that the submenu have opened up, right? So the user have no idea if anything happened or if this link is actually doing anything when they interact with it. Another issue is that this is actually a wrong element to use for this purpose, right? So in accessibility, and I believe this is the also part of the HTML specification, is that the links are usually used to take the user somewhere. So the links go somewhere, and the buttons are used to perform some sort of an action, right? So buttons are for doing something, and links are for going somewhere, right? So in that context, this is actually a wrong element to use because the purpose is to open the submenu, not going somewhere, right? And then lastly, this has a very bad device compatibility, right? So when you have a mega menu structured with a link, usually the interactive or the interactive actions, right? The way the submenu opens up is whether either by when the first level idle, so when the link gets a hover, or when it gets a focus, or like when it gets when it's clicked on, right? Clicking is not a problem, I would say, but how do you do a hover on mobile devices, right? Or how do you even do a focus on mobile devices, right? You cannot do that, right? And even if the user was using a PC like on the desktop, but they can only use a keyboard, right? Using a keyboard, there's no hover. Keyboard does not have ability to do a hover. Also, if the user can only use a mouse, the mouse cannot do a focus, right? The mouse can hover, click, but it cannot do a focus. So there is a bit of a lack of device compatibility with this structure. So we're gonna change this so that this is more accessible and has a better device compatibility. Right. So on this slide, I have a code snippet just showing that what's inside the list title. So instead of a link, I have a button that is a type of button, and I have aria expanded equals false, aria controls. The value of aria controls is the ID of the sibling unordered list. And then the button text is item 1. And the sibling element, the sibling unordered list, has ID of ID underscore about underscore menu, which is the value of the aria controls in the button. So what's happening here is this. So replace the link with the button, right? So there's only one way of interaction. There's only one way to interact with this, just a click. And the aria expanded is an attribute that provides additional information to the screen readers. So when screen reader comes across a button that has aria expanded false, it will say button collapsed. So What that means is whatever this button controls is currently closed or is not on screen. And when the user interacts with it by clicking on it or pressing enter, etc., when they interact with it, the value of area expanded have to change to true to inform the screen reader that whatever it controls is now open and on page. So the screen reader will say expanded to let the user know, hey, you just opened something, right? Now, this value is something that you have to change, right? So in your JavaScript, you will have to have the event listener on this for this button, and then when this button is clicked, the value of the area expanded will change between false and true, right? And then we have the area controls. That one is actually that's actually creating the relationship with the element that this is pointing to, right? So it's not always announced or recognized by the screen readers. Some screen readers does recognize this and some don't. So because there are still some that are recognizing this, it's a good practice to include this. So what this one does is it just basically creates a relationship and show the screen reader that it's relationship with another element, right? So it's pretty much saying, hey, there is a element with this ID, and I'm controlling that ID, right? So just informing the screen reader of that relationship. So in this case, what the screen reader will say is when the user first comes to that first level title, which is a button, the screen reader will say it's collapsed. When they interact with it, it will say expanded to let the user know that, hey, the sub menu just put. Yeah. So I have a short audio clip of that as well. So the first one I'm gonna play is the typical, the common structure that is using the link and honor the list as a sibling.
Navigation landmark list with 3 items. Link item 1.
Right. Again.
Navigation landmark list with 3 items. Link item 1.
Right. So it doesn't sound like I did anything with this, right? Well, actually, I pressed enter when I was testing this. I did press enter, and it doesn't really tell you anything. Right? It just tell you that it's a link item 1, right? The next one is the one that is using a button with the area expanded.
Navigation landmark list with 3 items. Item 1 button collapsed. Expanded. Collapsed.
All right. I'm gonna play one more time.
Navigation landmark list with 3 items. Item 1 button collapsed. Expanded. Collapsed.
Okay. So the first time it said a button collapsed, right? Because by default your sub menu is closed; it's not open and visible on the page. So it makes sense to have your button say your sub menu is collapsed, right? And then the second time it said expanded. That's when I pressed enter to activate the button. And then the JavaScript, is the event listener on this button is triggered, and then changes the value of area expanded to true, and then the screen reader announces that it's expanded. And then the third time, the last time, it said it collapsed. That's when I pressed enter again on the button, and that's when it collapsed or remove the submenu. right? So the value changes back to false, and then the screen reader will just say it's collapsed, right? If you notice, it doesn't always say button expanded or button collapsed, button expanded all the time. It will say button collapsed the first time, but the next time it will just say expanded. And then if you interact with it, it will just say collapsed or expanded. It will not say button again because you are already on that button on the same element, right? So to reduce that, to reduce the amount of information unnecessarily being repeated, the screen reader will just say the changes made to the button as long as you are on that same button, right? Now, this is all good, but there are cases where we need to have both the link and a button, right? Because you need a link so the users can actually go to that page, right? Because if you only have a button, that means there is no way for the users to actually go to this page, right? But if you need to have the users to go to that page, but also be able to open and interact with the sub menu, you can use you can combine them together, right? So you can use the link and a button together in as a single menu item. So on the slide, I have a code snippet, right? So I just have a code snippet of a single list item. So this represents your first menu item, of the first level of your main menu item, and then the link inside the list item is the actual link that goes to that page, right? So this is not a dead link anymore. This is an actual valid link that actually goes somewhere. And next to the link is the button, right? So same button that we just saw in the previous slide. It's a button with the ARIA expanded, ARIA controls, and then this one now I have ARIA label, and the value is more item 1 pages, right? So and then after that we have unordered list as a sibling of the button, right? So this one kind of gives the users the both or all the good things about pretty much like every options that's available, right? So they can interact with the link to go to the item 1 page, or they can interact with the button to open the sub menu and then go to one of the pages in the sub menu. The ARIA label attribute is an attribute that provides what's called an accessible name, right? So what accessible name is what screen readers say about that element, right? So you can so ARIA label is kind of a different way of using the text, right? So before in the previous slide, we have a button and then we had a button text of item 1, but in this in this new method where we are using the both link and button, it doesn't look good to have that button with the text in it. So usually, that button has the arrow icon to show whether it's open and closed, right? And we almost never use the actual text in the button. So, but the screen reader still needs to know what this button does, and we still need to give some type of text to it, so that, right? And that's what ARIA label does. It is a different way of providing the text to the button, so that when screen reader comes across this button, it will say it will say button, more item, 1 pages. So the users who use the screen reader, they understand, okay, so this opens up the sub menu, right? So when I interact with this button, there's gonna be something. It's going to open something, right? And most likely it's going to be a sub menu. Now, having seen the different ways to make the navigation menu accessible, the one really important thing is you cannot mix and match all these different types we saw today, right? So you cannot have, so for example, you cannot have the first item that's using a link and a button, the second item be just a link, and then the third item just be a button. Like you cannot have that mix and match of differently structured navigation items, right? Because one of the important thing in accessibility is the consistency, right? So the users needs to have a very consistent experience when they are interacting with the website. And if you're providing a very different user experience on the navigation menu, it can be very confusing to some users, right? Because the user could be you cannot really assume the user have only just one type of disability, right? The user could be blind, but also at the same time have some sort of cognitive disorder. So and that could be the type that makes them hard to understand some of the things, like even like the simplest of things, they may still find it very hard to understand or comprehend. So providing that very consistent user experience is very important. So if you're going to choose, you have to stay and stick to that style that you chose, right? So if you are going to choose that, my menus, my first level menu items are gonna be a button, then every first level menu item must be a button, right? Or if you're gonna say it's gonna be a link and a button, it will be every one of them should be a link and a button, right? Or if you say if it's gonna be just a link, then all of them has to be just a link, right? The downside of having them just a link is that now you're not able to have the sub menu, right? Because as we saw earlier, the links are not a good element to create a sub menu structure, right? So if you need to have a sub menu, if you need to have a navigation menu that has a sub menu, you have to choose between having just a button for the first level items or using the link and a button for the first level items. Yeah. So the keyboard support for the mega menus, right? They have to be keyboard. They have to be keyboard operable as well, right? Because the screen reader users, they don't use mouse; they only use the keyboard. So it makes sense for the mega menus to have a really good keyboard support, right? And so one of the support you need to make sure that is available is the tab and shift the tab to move the focus between the first level items, right? And if the sub menu is open, the next focus should be into and through the links that are in the sub menu. So this is actually something you get out of the box, right? So as long as your HTML is in the correct order and structured correctly, this you get it out of the box without having to do anything, right? Next one is a space or enter. So so like when the focus is on a link, you it it's focus on the button. Okay, so if the focus is on a link and user presses space or enter, you set that ARIA current value to page, right? So just like we saw one of the first the slides, the active link, you give that active link ARIA current with the value of page, right? When the focus is on a button and the user presses spacebar or the enter key, now that's a that's a click event, right? So that toggles the sub menu, and then you have to make sure that the button's ARIA expanded value changes accordingly, right? So when the submenu opens, the value should be true. When it's closed, the value should be false. The escape key is for the users to be able to close this submenu, right? Without having to. So let's say you have a submenu and you have quite a big submenu with, let's say, 20 links in the submenu. And the user is tabbing through, and then they are like, let's say they are halfway through, but they want to go back to the first level, right? So instead of the user having to do a shift to tab multiple times to go back to the first level, they can simply press an escape key to close that submenu and set the focus back to that first level item that that is associated with that sub menu, right? So that it's a quick way for them to go back to the first level. Optionally, you can provide arrow key support. So when the user is user is on the first level or in the sub menu, using the up and down or left and right moves the focus around the links, right? So for example, if the user is on the first level and the first item, pressing the right arrow key will move the focus to the second item, and then another right arrow key will move the focus to the third item, and then from there, pressing the left arrow key will move the focus back to the second item. And when the user is the focus in the sub menu, pressing the up and down arrow key will move the focus up and down the list of links in the sub menu, or even left and right if there are more than one list in the sub menu, right? The home button to go back to the first link or the button, and the end button to go to the last link or a button in the menu, right? Again, these are optional, right? These are quite a these are quite a it's not actually not that easy to implement. I think you will probably end up having to create a whole new class just for your navigation, right? Again, this is optional, right? So it's good to have, but it's not really necessary. But I would say these first three, so your tab, shift to tab, space or enter, and the escape key, those are I would say those are necessary. And sometimes we have more than one navigations on our site, right? And in that case, you have to name each of them to something that that represents their purpose, right? So in the code snippet on the slide, I have what navigation menu, one nav with ARIA label main, and then another nav with ARIA label docs navigation, right? So the user will come across these navigations, and then they will hear the navigation main and then navigation docs navigation. So based on that, they know which one's the main one and which one's like a sidebar or secondary, right? And actually, this the second one here, the ARIA label docs navigation. This is actually what Bootstrap uses for their site navigation on their website. Right, that's the exact same wording that I got from their website. So again, so ARIA label is kind of giving that accessible name to the element, so the screen reader can announce its purpose or what it does to the user. And that is all I have for the making navigations accessible. Nonzo, I'm not sure how we're doing with the time. If we have enough time, I do have examples that I wanted to show.
Yeah, we're good on time. We have
Yeah.
about 15 minutes left. Yep.
Okay, so let me just reshare my screen. Just give me one sec. All right, okay. Hopefully my screen reader will work with me.
Screen sharing meeting. Apple, Canada.
Okay, so I have two websites open to show a one site that has really good navigation, and then another site has a unfortunately bad navigation. Right? So I have the Apple Canada website open here. The Apple Canada uses the second mega menu structure that uses the both link and a button. So I just want you guys to hear what it's actually, what it sounds like. Let me see.
Global navigation landmark list clickable with 13 items. Apple visited link. Rate 80. Rate 75.
Let's see.
Tap volume control window. Volume task. Apple Canada. Document. No previous landmark. Out of list head. Global navigation landmark list clickable with 13 items. Apple visited link.
Can you guys all hear that?
Yeah, I could hear that.
Yeah. Okay. So let's because I'm gonna move through those first few items, and then you guys can hear what it sounds like.
Rate 60. Rate 60. Rate 55.
Okay. So hopefully that should be slow enough to hear.
List with 2 items. Store link. Store menu button collapsed. List with 2 items. Mac link. Mac menu button collapsed. Expanded. Explore Mac list with 10 items.
Explore all Mac.
Link.
MacBook Air.
Link.
MacBook Pro.
Link. iMac link.
And then from here, I want to go back. So instead of doing Shift to tab, I can simply press Escape key.
List with 2 items. Mac menu button collapsed.
And that takes me back to the last element that I interacted with, right? So Apple has a very good and accessible navigation. Now let's take a look at
Toronto
Police Service. I didn't want to use this site, but I couldn't really find another site.
Police record checks.
So I mean, they got more issues other than the
link to police record check
navigation. But let's take a look at their navigation.
List with 3.
Skip to
banner landmark.
Toronto Police.
List.
Chief of Police.
Link. Link to TPS homepage visited link. Site search button.
Okay, so now after this I'm going into that black
link to who do
area,
I call?
the area that has a black background, the which is visually, which is like a very
Link to report.
obvious navigation menu. But let's hear what the screen reader says.
Link to who do I. Clickable.
About TPS.
Visited link.
Right, so it doesn't tell me that this is a
Police record
navigation.
checks apply.
It doesn't tell me this is a navigation. So it just tells
Link to
me it's a
police
link.
record checks online reporting.
And
List with 9 items.
Organizational chart. Leadership team. Toronto Police Services Board.
so like
Link.
from here, if I press escape,
Link to who do I call.
instead of take me back to the item that I interacted with, which is the about
Link to who
TPS
do I.
about TPS link, it kind of takes the focus, looks like all the way back
Link
to the page itself, and then
Clickable.
Date.
Clickable. List with 9.
Le-
Link to who do I call. Clickable.
Data and
yeah, so it doesn't really tell me a lot of
Larry has left the meeting alert.
information that I need to know where I am or where I'm about to go
Link
next.
to police record. List.
open data.
Clickable.
And
Link.
yeah,
Exit and
so that's the problem here. I mean, like, other than this carousel keep announcing, the problem with their navigation is like what we talked about. It's interactive when it's hover. It's very interactive when it's focused, but when I click on it, let's click on it, it takes me to the different page, right? So if I was using their website on like mobile devices, I wouldn't be able to see this sub menu, right? It would just take me to the data and maps page immediately, unless their mobile view shows this in a hamburger menu that just like lists everything, right? Again, yeah. So unless that's the case, then this is one of the problems that we talked about earlier when you're using a link to show the summary. Yeah, and that is all I have for today.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Hojung. I honestly always love your demos to see all the accessibility things that happen when we're using things like screen readers. Did we have any questions for Hojung before we wrap up?
In terms of your experience when designing and being in charge of accessibility, how often do you kind of come across, I don't know what the best way to phrase this is, but how often do you come across sites, like, let's say from a percentage scale, that are just not really up to par with what you just showed us? Like, they have, as you said, like the bare minimum for if the navigation's small, but we saw with TPS the website was somewhat lacking. Like,
yeah, so nowadays it's not too bad, but I think there is also a technology limitations as well. So like if you are using things like a WordPress or like some sort of a CMS, I'm not gonna say Drupal because I know Drupal puts a lot of accessibility features already built into their CMS. So I kind of don't want to say Drupal, but I've seen some WordPress sites lacking few accessibility features or even functions, right? Not just for navigations, but like on other contents as well. So it's kind of hard to say like how much I see. It really depends on, I guess, how that website is built or was built. And also another thing is when that site was built, right? Because back, I think even before 2012, I believe 2012 was the first introduction of web accessibility in AODA, the Accessibility for Ontarians with Disabilities Act. So pretty much anything before 2012, would have some would be lacking in like accessibility features. Although legally they should be up to date by now, But yeah, so if the site was built, say like using a framework like a React or Angular, you have a full control to make things accessible. So the expectation would be, those ones should have very low number of issues. But no, it's not to say they don't have any. They should have very lower number of issues compared to the site they were built with, like things like a WordPress, right? Because you don't really have all the control to tweak things around.
Thanks.
Did we have any more questions for Hojung? We have a question from Lisa. Could you talk a little bit more about screen reader software? For example, what screen reader software did you use in your example?
Right. So the one I used is called NVDA. It's actually a free screen reader. And actually, I believe it's one of the developer is actually blind. So there's that. Another very popular one is called JAWS, JAWS, like the shark movie. That one is a paid software. It's quite expensive, but that one is actually one of the most popular software used by the blind users, blind community. But that's not the only one that they use. I believe in 2022 or before, there was a survey done, and a lot of blind people uses more than one screen reader, and then two most commonly used together are JAWS and NVDA. If you are using a Mac, actually Mac has a really good built-in screen reader, VoiceOver. I think you may have heard of it. So VoiceOver does a pretty good job with for a built-in screen reader. But then again, there are people using JAWS and then VoiceOver as a backup, or NVDA and VoiceOver as a backup, that type of thing. So those three are, I would say, quite popular. Windows also have its own built-in. Can't remember what it's called off my head. And then Android has a TalkBack, which is a built-in screen reader for Android in the Android devices. So yeah, there are quite a few different, or actually those are like the most popular screen readers that are out there.
Thanks.
Awesome. Were there any other questions? We have a question from Ali. Is there another way besides elements.focus to make NVDA read an element after a certain event?
Yes. So there is a ARIA attribute called ARIA Live, and it's got three values that you can use, which is off, polite, and assertive. So how that works is the ARIA Live would be your parent element, and then the changes would be happening for the child element. So let me see if I can remember. The specification for ARIA alert is that the parent element has to be in the DOM 300 milliseconds before the child is added or changed in the DOM, right? So the parent has to be already on the DOM first. And then whenever there is a change to the child, the screen reader, whether it's an NVDA or JAWS, the screen reader will pick up on that change, and based on the value used on the ARIA Live attribute, the screen reader will announce the change whether after the current announcement or by interrupting current one and then announcing it, right? So for example, like if you have ARIA Live Lite, and then if the screen reader is saying something currently, and then the child is updated, the screen reader will wait until whatever it's saying first, and then announce the changes made inside the ARIA Live. Whereas if you use ARIA Live Assertive, what happens is when the screen reader is saying something like right now, and there's a change happening inside, there's a change happening in the ARIA Live, it will stop whatever it's saying and then announce that change right away. Right. So the application of that is depending on how you want to how you want that change to be announced and how urgent it is, right? So for example, if your website, for example, let's say like CBC News website, right? There's like breaking news happening, some sort of attack or some sort of event, really violent event happening in downtown. That breaking news would be a assertive announcement, right? So you want the users on your website to know about the event right away without any delay, right? Whereas something very common, like let's say you're filtering a list of movies, right? After clicking that filter button or the search button, if you want the screen reader to say this many results came up or this many results were returned, that would be an ARIA Live Lite, right? So that result kind of can wait until the current event, whatever the screen reader is saying at the moment.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Hojung, again. This was such a insightful presentation. Before we go, I'm going to be reposting all the links to TechTank. If this is your first time joining us, then welcome. Here at TechTank, we really want to create an inclusive space for all tech enthusiasts to collaborate and make meaningful connections. We host a lot of events like networking events, social events, virtual discussions, mentoring sessions, and more. And so if you do want to find out more information about us, you can head over to our website at techtankto.com, and you can also join our community through our join button there. That's all we have for tonight, folks. We'll see you in the next one. Have a good night.